Hey everyone, it's fall, y'all.
Hello, hello. Happy fall.
Dave, we're just waiting for your pumpkin spice, your pumpkin carving, all of
Yeah,
it.
unfortunately, I don't have any of it here. My wife did buy some more outdoor decorations. I was a little surprised. So I've got one daughter. She doesn't live here. She lives in California that absolutely loves Halloween. It's her favorite holiday. Super excited to have Halloween stuff around the house. Well, she's gone, and we really never had that much unless she was around. I mean, when she got to a point, she'd talk me into buying stuff. My wife went out and bought a bunch of yard decorations this year. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with my wife. She's just missing my daughter. She'll be back here in about a year. But we've got all kinds of stuff out front. But unfortunately, I can't take you out there, and I didn't bring any pumpkins inside today.
That's okay. Well, we have so many yard decorations, not at my house, but everywhere around me. And the skeletons are the biggest thing right now. And everybody has their yards lined to the max with stuff, except for us. We have like 3 pumpkins on the porch, and that's all.
Yeah, we've got some really nice homes that are decorated extremely nice around our area. I feel like it's Christmas. You always have the people have the big Christmas decorations. I was never raised in an environment, and maybe you as well, where you had a lot of Halloween decorations like you do. But I mean, you've got people that have got almost a haunted house set up right out in the front yard. So pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely crazy. Well, I just want to thank all of you that are with us live and those on replay. Thank you so much for being here. It's really important that we come on every single week and talk about retirement and dive into each of these topics. And Dave, we have so many awesome topics we always pull from. How many questions do you think you've answered over the last couple of years we've been doing this?
It's got to be over 10,000 by this point. I don't know, but I've got to assume. I know we counted it back when we were over 4,000. That was over a year ago. I've got to assume by this point we're approaching 10 if we're not over 10.
Yeah, so I love that we have so many questions to choose from. We have so many questions we continue to get after every webinar, feedback. So many questions are just submitted in through email. And so I'm encouraging you, if you have any questions or if you have something on your mind that's retirement, go ahead and submit it here on the show live and we'll get Dave to answer that. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, email it at CR@Retirement Risk Advisors and we'll get it on for our next show. Well, Dave, if you're ready, I'm going to start pulling in some of these questions and see what we can do.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's get our first one here. Let's get David's on here. I am moving money from tax-deferred IRA and pension to Roth, thinking about inheritance and 10-year takeout with beneficiaries in higher to highest tax brackets while tax-free from Roth. And he's just wondering if this is a good idea.
Yeah, it definitely is, David, when you look at it. By the way, great name. Yeah, congratulations to your parents that named you on that. But it is a great idea because what we're trying to do, there's a couple of things. One, we've got historically low tax rates. So it's a great time anyway for anyone to start moving money. But he brings up a very valid issue and a problem that we see with many people. When you look at it, if you end up with an IRA when you pass away, that's going to go down to your kids generally, especially if you're the last spouse. Now, if you're married and there's a surviving spouse, they'll inherit that, but it goes down to the kids. Well, the problem is you're in retirement and sometimes, usually in your late 70s, 80s. Well, that puts your kids right about 50 or 60 where they're just getting to the end of their careers. They've got large income streams. So you may have an issue where you're in a much lower tax bracket now than what your kids are going to be in once they inherit that money. So if you're not going to spend it all, you're in a position where you've got leftover money, you absolutely want to move that money out of the IRAs so you don't have to worry about it. The traditional IRAs, get into the Roth, and then your family can inherit it without having to worry about any taxes. So great strategy. Recommend it for anyone. If you are subject to the estate tax, which very few are, you may see where more of you become subject if they lower the rates down. It's horrible because you say, I've got maybe a 45% estate tax, I've got a 37% income tax, and I may have a 12 or 13% state tax, depending on where I'm at. You can end up walking away with 10, 15% of that money is all for your beneficiaries. So there's some great planning to be done there, and David's definitely on the right track.
Dave, I heard from a little bird that there may be a Roth webinar that's coming out soon from the team over here.
Yes, there is. I'm excited to get it finished. We've got the content there. I've got to break it down into slides. Now, there's a process that you go through when you're trying to create webinars, but we've got the content there. I've got to break it into slides, and then you've got to design it. So as soon as we can get that done, we should be able to launch it. I hope it's by the end of the year. Worst case, it's going to be January, but I really want to get this course out by December sometime.
That's great. And again, everyone, if you're here live, go ahead and submit your questions. Just like David's question here, go ahead and submit it in the comments there, and we'll be able to squeeze it in between the other questions that we have here as well. All right, Dave, let's get over to our next one here. Hopefully I try to squeeze all of this in there. So we have a boy, I can't even talk today. Younger, lower earning spouse claims Social Security when she is 62, and then husband claims at age 70. Can she switch over to half of husband's amount, or does claiming early reduce the possible half of her husband?
Yeah, let me answer this. It's interesting the way this is worded because the answer is yes, that she can go to the husband's half, but it will be reduced. So if you look at the question, the way it's being answered, that she does have the ability to at age 70, when he gets to age 70, get access to half the benefits, but where she did claim at 62, they will be reduced down proportionately, from what she would have gotten. So let's say that she would have gotten $1,000, let's say his full retirement age benefit, and realize this too, even though he waited till age 70, spousal benefits are based upon full retirement age benefit. So he may be getting, far more than the $2,000 once he gets age 70. She'll end up getting whatever half of was available at age 66, let's assume, was his full retirement age. So she'd end up getting $1,000, but then that would be reduced down for those 4 years she claimed early.
Dave, why when we bring up spousal benefits, did I hear from several financial advisors who say, "Hey, I don't even go that direction. It's too confusing for me."
Yeah, because many people just don't understand it. I mean, Social Security is so confusing when you look at it. I mean, if you get their book, they used to print it. I saw one in the library. I've not been able to get a copy of it. I guess I didn't want to. I don't know now if you can even order it, but it's like 900 pages. I mean, if you can imagine going through, it's almost like the IRS code. Now, obviously, it's much bigger than that. We used to have full office rooms where we had display cases with the IRS code inside of it back in my early days of accounting. But if we look at what is involved in the Social Security program, much more complex than you would think. And so many advisors just don't want to dive into it. And they don't feel it's their responsibility. And I don't know, in theory, I'd say it is. I mean, we're looking at retirement income, what people need to be aware of, but many of them just say, look, I do investing, I deal with insurance, I deal with annuities. I want to mess with that, but it can truly change people's retirement. There's a lot of money that can end up getting left on the table if it's not handled correctly.
And Dave, I think one of the biggest parts we talk about with this all the time, especially with spouses, is communication, making sure we know what each other's doing and how we work together as a team.
Absolutely.
Dave, let's pull up our question here from a longtime watcher, Gary. Gary's with us today. Gary, welcome back.
Yeah, it's so good to have you back, Gary. I haven't seen you here for a little while. I see you on various webinars and things. So good to have you back with us today.
And Gary's saying, referring to the House Ways and Means legislative proposals, do you think the mega backdoor Roth IRA will be eliminated?
I do think there's some probability that it's going to happen. Now, that being said, they are trying to extend out opportunities for people to put money into the Roth. I think what they're trying to do, though, is to close some of these loopholes that are being used oftentimes by the wealthiest of Americans to be able to take advantage of the mega backdoor Roth. I personally hope it stays, but I do think there's some precedents to have it go away, and then they just expand out to try to get employers to have more Roth options, try to get them to be structured where they could put their contributions, employer contribution, into a Roth account, do some of these other things. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be very interesting. We've got so many things that could really change retirement planning coming about over the next year or so. Going to be very interesting for all of us as it comes about, and we have to adjust for it.
And Dave, we know that Gary is well-versed in mega backdoor Roth. He asked quite a few questions in this, but for everyone else who's on here or maybe watching on replay who don't know what the mega backdoor Roth is, can you help explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, so let me try to give a quick overview of it. If we're looking at a traditional 401k plan, this is usually where it's all happening at. So you've got a traditional 401k plan. Most of you are used to two parts of this. The part where you make an employee contribution, which is up to $19,500 $6,500. If you're under age 50 or older, you can put an additional 6,500 or 26,000. And then you have an employer match. So whatever it is, 3%, 4%, 5%, 1%, they're going to match that amount. So that goes in, and many of you are used to that. Well, if you have your plan set up to where the plan can accept after-tax contributions, you can put up to $58,000 into these accounts, and then have the ability, if you've got the Roth option there, basically to just transfer that after-tax money that goes into there, that difference between what you already contributed, which may went into the Roth, your employer contribution, which went into the tax deferred account, and then the difference between the two, you can contribute it into tax deferred and immediately move it over. Now it's in a Roth bucket and going to grow tax-free, have tax-free distribution. So it's a huge opportunity for people. They can get tens of thousands of additional dollars in tax-free environment. So it is something to look at, but there's laws regarding it, as Gary's talking about, some chances it's just going to go away here at some point.
So it sounds like when things are a benefit for us, things start to slowly change, it seems like.
Yeah, and again, when they're looking at what people are benefiting, obviously your average family household's not going to be able to put $58,000 into their retirement. So government's looking and saying who's benefiting from these programs. How can we adjust it to try to get more money, even out the playing field? And that's really what they're trying to do here.
And Dave, with that, I do have Gary's follow-up question. Gary, again, thank you for submitting your questions. And he's saying, Dave, do you think that an LIRP, which is a life insurance retirement plan, would be a good alternative if the mega backdoor Roth IRA is eliminated?
Absolutely. And I think it's a good alternative for many people anyway. I mean, even if you didn't have the mega backdoor Roth, now many people are in a position where they can contribute to both. And I love to see it when people do that and have that accessibility. But there's a lot of things a life insurance plan can do for you that a Roth 401k especially may not be able to do for you. One of the biggest ones, many of these plans don't have in-service distributions. So if you get the money in there, you can't put it into an annuity. You're going to be limited to whatever the plan options are for your investing. You're not going to have the freedom that you have. Well, if you can get into a life insurance retirement plan, you've got the benefits that come with the Roth, tax-free growth, tax-free distribution, but you've also got the opportunity to have the life insurance policy portion that can be used for death benefit or a long-term care issue. So when we look at the overall risk, they work very well hand in hand. And our recommendation for most people, let's use both of them to best level out your risk and get you where you need to be.
And Dave, is there the Lirp, is it better than the mega backdoor Roth?
I don't know that I would say it's better. Again, it depends on what risk you're trying to eliminate. It depends on how much money that you have available. It depends on what you expect your retirement to look like. I mean, if I look at someone like my mother, who ended up passing away at age 60, and she knew that she was going to die fairly young, wouldn't be in some type of hospice for any length of time or in a long-term care facility, wouldn't make a lot of sense to really cover that risk, because she knew with her health and the issues she was having with her kidneys that she was going to end up passing away because of those. And it wasn't going to be something to be extended out for long periods of time. So we've got to look at the situation, but I do like both products. I do obviously like Lirps and what they offer, but it would have to be an individual facts and circumstances look before we could determine what's going to work best for that individual.
Great answer. Gary, thank you so much for submitting your question. And if you're like Gary and you have questions, go ahead and get those submitted and we can get those on here, because again, we're both on Facebook and YouTube Live today. And we'll continue on with our questions here, Dave. Let's get over to Susan's question. Shouldn't retired people have readily accessible money that is not in the stock market so they don't have to sell any stocks when the market tanks?
Absolutely. And I think there was some misunderstanding. This came from a webinar. I remember this question being asked during that webinar. And we were talking about the taxable bucket where we want to have our emergency fund money. And there was a misunderstanding that all of that should go into the stock market. That is not what should happen. You should have it in liquid assets, because as Susan points out, the last thing you want to have is a situation where you have an emergency and you're planning on 6 months of income. The next day, the stock market drops 40%, and now you end up with 3.5 months of income. Got a real problem there at being able to provide for that issue and that risk that you're trying to solve. And you just want that money to get you through a tough time, get you through a position where you may need shock or aspirational money. That's what that money's there for. So yeah, you want to keep it safe. You want to keep it secure. It's not going to perform very well, but that's okay. That's all part of the plan and what we're expecting when we look at that money that we've got set in the taxable bucket for emergencies.
So Dave, besides just putting all this extra money that we have in the stock market because we may need it for emergencies, what are the reasons why we should not throw this money into the stock market and just put all of it right into one area?
Well, I think people are getting careless. We've had a stock market that just continues to go up, and you watch and you look at it and you realize the amount of money that your friends and neighbors and maybe even yourself have made over the last year. We get to a point that we just get to where we forget that things go down. We forget the effect of these things. It's a reality of life. Why do women continue to have kids after they have their first one? You go through that first experience, and I've lived it as a father, not as a mother, but that first time you see your wife struggling and all the pain and the misery and everything else. Well, then they get the joy of the kid. And then by the next time, they've forgotten a lot about how painful it was. And then we have kid number 2. And in my case, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, we just keep going. But it's the same thing with our retirement accounts. We forget what 2008 looked like. We forget what 2000 looked like, how much pain it caused. We forget what 1987 looked like if you're in the market then. And we just think it's going to keep going. And we want to tell our friends what a great stock investor we are. Well, then you get a situation where it goes down. So we've got to be very careful to just not get sucked in to what's going on, believing that that market will never turn, because at some point it's going to happen.
And Dave, it's very volatile is what you're talking about. Even if we look into cryptocurrency, I mean, that's a hype that's been going on for a while. And you've talked about it several times where you've had many opportunities to be part of this. But again, it's the same concept is we're riding a wave on whatever happens. And it is really a scary opportunity if you don't do it right.
Yeah, and I do have my feelings on cryptocurrency. I mean, the problem is, and again, others will argue for it. And if you're one of those, enjoy it, invest it, do whatever you want to do with the cryptocurrency. But what do you have? I mean, think if everything falls apart, which we've got supply chain issues. I went to Walmart last night in our local area. It looked like a Goodwill store. And sometimes they do. Walmart's not the nicest place. I'll tell you that from a store perspective. But you went into where the clothes are, not just the food shelves. I mean, you had rows of shelves that were empty. You went into the clothes section and they'd scattered out their little clothes rings, to where they're about 5 feet apart. I've never been in Walmart where you're not having to hit the aisles as you go through there because they didn't have any clothes. And it just looked like each of them had about 5 or 6 items on there. So as we look at what's going on, we look at this inflation. The average person is not going to be able to keep up with $5 gas prices. They're not going to be able to keep up with food that's going up 10, 20%. So we've just got to look at these things, say, what's left when it's all done? Cryptocurrency, there's nothing. It's an accounting system. That's all it is. We look at what's in the market. At least you have a business. If you invest in Amazon or Walmart or some other business, hopefully at least you've got an income stream there that can continue to make some type of money going forward.
A very great point, Dave. I'm going to continue to move on as I know this is a hot topic for lots of those viewing in. So I appreciate you being here and asking your questions and being part of this. Dave, let's go over to Robert's question. He said, I'm going to exchange an annuity to an annuity with long-term care rider. Do you have any tips on what I should look for in the new annuity?
Robert, I do. There's a couple of things. Now, the assumption is you're doing a 1035 exchange, which allows you to do transactions inside of insurance products without having any tax consequences. But the thing you want to look at is, what does that long-term care rider look like? Now, when we take it from an annuity standpoint, it's different than a life insurance policy. Annuities usually are going to double or triple your income if you have a long-term care event. Meaning if you annuitize the product, you're getting $1,000 a month, end up at the long-term care event, they may pay you $2,000 or $3,000 per month during that period of time. So you've got to look what the multiplier is and what's required to have that multiplier kick in. And then you also want to look at the time. Average long-term care stay for a male is 2.2 years. For a female is 3.7 years. So you want to make sure it's going to cover the time period that you're looking for, and then really figure out what the cost of that is. Make sure that it makes sense from a cost standpoint, if it's additional fees to have this rider in comparison to the current annuity you may already have.
And Dave, now we've talked about on the stock market and the different ups and downs we're going to go through. What about annuities? Because I feel like this could be a safer bet if we have the right product.
Yeah, so you've got two kinds. Well, there's multiple types of annuities. You've got a single premium immediate annuity where you're just putting the money in and turning it into an immediate income stream. But you've also got fixed and variable annuities. You got those that are tied to an index. Then you've got those that are tied to a stock market. The variable annuities people have to be careful with. Now, I know many top advisors I work with that recommend these. Problem is, when we look at them, usually they're very high fee comparative to an indexed annuity, and you're subject to stock market risk. So if the market ends up going down substantially, it could affect the amount of money you have available once you get to a point you annuitize that product. So we recommend indexed annuities. As you look at the way they're structured, there's some great products out there. Now, there's income annuities and growth annuities. I will tell you that, even from an index side, and you need to take that in consideration as well. Income products, not going to have a lot of money to take out of that at any given time. You may be able to get your premiums back, what you paid in. Growth annuity, it's going to grow, but the income stream during retirement is going to be smaller. So what do you want? Do you want asset growth, or you can just pull money out as you please, not even annuitize the product, but have the benefits of an annuity? Or do you want a income product that's going to provide you guaranteed income for the rest of your life that you don't have to worry about?
Dave, so what I'm hearing from you is that we have all these various options, not only through annuities, but we talked about long-term care and all the other possibilities with the stock market. But you're saying, let's first of all, let's get some help, right? Let's realize we need to take some action and get some help, so we're not doing this on our own, because I'm hearing that pretty loud from what you're discussing right here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at it on our side, CR. If you look at it now, I mean, when we take our Getting Safely Through Retirement course, it's an hour and a half now. We've taken out the case study, which is another half hour that we add on as a freebie at the end of that. So it's really 2 hours of education. We've got our Changing World of Retirement course, that's 4 hours of education. And we're adding our Fundamentals for a Secure Retirement course that's going to be another 4 hours. So we've got ourselves just 10 hours of basic education that I believe everyone needs just to even kind of understand what we're doing. And then you really need an advisor after that that's probably going to spend anywhere from 3 to 10 hours with you, educating you individually on all the things that were talked about and how they will apply for you. And let's look at illustrations. Let's look at what an annuity might look like for you, and talk through what that looks like, and the risks and the benefits and all those things. So yeah, I mean, it could take 20 hours, CR, for someone to just really get a good understanding of the things they should be doing. And unfortunately, most people spend less time planning for their retirement than they're going to planning for their next vacation.
And Dave, I like this concept, because what you're saying is instead of just being thrown into an advisor to sit down and say, okay, now we're going to solve all your problems, you're saying, I want you to become educated. So when you sit down with an advisor, you know what's being discussed, and you know how to talk in the situation, and not just say, here's the best product for you, because you need to know for yourself what really works for you before you get into that situation and sit down.
Yes, because we take a whole different look at this. If you take a traditional advisor, and I've worked with thousands of them throughout my career as a CPA and as a financial professional, traditional advisors are out there basically trying to just figure out how much money you need to be able to get through retirement. So they're going to take the highest rate of return they can possibly get, because it makes them look better, gets them a chance to get your money. Take the highest rate of return. Yeah, they may inflation adjust the income stream going forward, but then they're going to say, look, you need to have X dollars, keep investing this amount of money. Well, what we want to do is test all of that. We want to say, look, we're not just here to figure out how much money you need. We need to figure out what happens if you take your Social Security at the wrong time, so you don't have that much offset to your other assets. We want to look at what happens if you don't sign up for Medicare the way that you should, and you end up having a gap and end up having to come out of pocket at $100,000 in fees you didn't expect to. We want to look at what happens if tax rates double. What happens if the market goes down? I mean, so we're taking a whole different approach. That's why the education is so important. I don't, typical financial advisor, hey, go understand the rule of 72 and understand inflation. We can probably give you a good idea of what you need to know to be able to meet with a traditional advisor, but we need you to know more than that. We can't have you going in without that knowledge, or it's too hard to walk through and get you to a point you can understand the basics.
And I love that. And that's one of the things why we do this also, is to make sure we continue to add more education. With that, Dave, let's jump over to our next question here from Craig. He wants to know, how do you reduce the Medicare tax rate?
So I'm not exactly sure what this question, where it's coming in from. Now, if you look at it, the Medicare tax is what you're getting added onto your W-2 responsibilities. You have your payroll taxes. Part of that, 1.45% of that is going to Medicare from you. 1.45% of that from your employer is going to Medicare. The rest, 6.2% on each side, is going to Social Security to cover those things. So I'm not sure really what's being talked about. Now, there are some penalties associated with Medicare that you need to get signed up to avoid. And then there's also situations if you've got too much money that you end up getting a penalty where you've got to pay additional premiums. So if he's talking about the additional premium costs, only way you can get that down is to not have money that exceeds those income limits. If you're above those income limits, 2 years after the income, your premiums will go up for a year. And then if your income goes back down, they'll go back down as well. But hopefully that answers the question. Again, not fully sure which of those he's trying to get some direction on.
Dave, I have my own Medicare question. So 20 years from now, let's say 20, 25 years from now, I'm ready to retire. Am I going to be able to afford Medicare with what I have, maybe through Social Security alone?
Yeah, that's a good question, CR, and I don't mean to kind of pause on it, but it is a concern. If you look at top economists, they're saying there's going to become a point in the future, the amount you're getting on Social Security, which right now average person's getting $1,500 a month, that total amount's going to need to be spent to cover medical costs. Now, obviously, we're not going to put every retiree into a position where they can't afford to live. They can't afford to buy anything but drugs. We don't want retirees just eating drugs for to keep them alive. But it is a concern. It's going to be an issue that every person's going to have to look at. You're going to have to figure out how to save some additional money. And unfortunately, we are going to see some retirees, and we see it now, where they're getting hurt because the cost of medicine is going up faster than inflation from an income standpoint of what they're getting out of Social Security, and it's causing issues. So got to believe somehow there's going to be some fixes there, CR, but there's going to be some tough times in both Social Security and Medicare, and some tough decisions that have to be made to figure out how we're going to be able to best deal with these things.
And speaking of Social Security, I thought this was a really good question from Daphne. Well, she was saying that I took survivor Social Security at age 60. I was worried the rules would change and I would not get anything till full retirement at age 67. Dave, I just want to have you explain a little bit about what Daphne's trying to get to here.
Yeah. So one thing to know about survivor benefits, you do have two options. Now, when you're talking about living benefits, if you're getting spousal or your own, you have what's called deemed filing. So if there's two of you that are getting some type of benefit, you get the highest of the two. And if you claim for one, you claim for both. So we need to understand that from a survivor standpoint, you do have an opportunity to claim either on the survivor benefits or your own and let the others grow. So maybe a situation here where she ended up claiming early on the survivor, maybe her own benefits are still growing, maybe higher in the end. But let me address the issue of change. We look back, so Social Security was brought about in 1935. 1983 was when the last major changes were made to the program. Well, that was because we were having financial issues. In the late 1970s, the program was struggling. Ronald Reagan brings everybody together, gets all these changes put into place. But remember, even back then, 1983, the changes aren't taking effect really until right now. I mean, here we are in 2021. For the first time, we have average full retirement age going from 66, which it was last year, to 66 and 2 months this year. Next year, those people that were born in 1956, it's going to be 66 and 4 months. So we're going to see those adjustments. But this stuff doesn't happen overnight. So people that are making short-term decisions, they know the program's going to get changed immediately. Be aware that they're putting these things out. They're going to make changes somewhere around 2030. Well, the expectation is that that's going to be, 10 or 20 year window for those who are already going. The program will be fine. It's those that will be coming in after that 10 years, maybe 20 years, we'll see those adjustments. So unfortunately, I feel bad unless she desperately needed the money, I feel bad that she took this and made this decision, because she's going to find she's going to get to 67. All that's going to be there. And she's going to be missing hundreds of dollars a month that she would have been entitled to that she's not going to get now.
And Dave, since I've made the show about me, am I going to have Social Security when I retire?
I believe, or the world's going to have come to an end. I will tell you that. And the reason being is Social Security is the most liked program the government has. It's a program you're going to have a lot of retirees voting for when we have the adjustments around 2030, 2031. But as you look at it, it's going broke, but it won't go broke. Even at that point, it could pay 76% of the benefit. So I don't see an America that doesn't have Social Security working, or we've got a complete collapsed economy and everything else has been reset. And I guess we all have farms and alpacas, llamas, sheep, and fruit, whatever it is we're going to have on our farms.
Yeah. Darn it, I just gave all that up. Well, thank you for answering that, Dave. We've got the one from Armando here. Let's see if I can get it pulled up on the screen here. Happy Hump Day. Thank you for your show. Always a good schooling.
You're welcome, Armando. Glad to be here. Happy fall. We're glad to have our plaid and our attire. And here's your dad joke, one I use all the time when talking to my kids when they're leaving, going out the door. Have a good trip. I'll see you in the fall. So there you go. Your fall joke that you can use if someone's leaving, tie that in.
Well, Dave, if I would have known that, I could have put that little maybe I'll work on that next time.
Maybe next time. Yeah, I'll give you another one. So
perfect. Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here with us live. And for those who are part of this, I'm really excited for you to be with us as we continue to break this down each time. Dave, Gary is still waiting for both of us to come to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco for lunch or dinner.
I know, and I don't know how we're going to figure this out, CR. We've got to fit in. I am going to Vegas. I will tell you, Gary, I'm going to Vegas mid-November. Somehow I've got to try to figure out. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it'd be nice to figure out one of those days where I could just slip over and see you. But let me look at that schedule. That's maybe as close as I'm getting for a while, but I agree we've got to get there.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it'll be great. And just want to put a little plug in that Dave mentioned earlier. We have the Getting Safely Through Retirement. This is an amazing webinar. It's an hour and a half. And this will be, if you go to the website, retirementriskadvisors.com and /events, or just click the event tab, you can see this. And if you're looking for that CPE credit, you can get that as well there. Dave, that is kind of I don't want to say the number one, but that is the highlight of what we're talking about, is just getting into this whole retirement experience is starting with that webinar.
Yeah, because it opens their minds. We taught one yesterday. We've taught this course to thousands of people, but we added a new question yesterday because we really wanted to understand where people were at with it. And the question was, did you get something from this webinar that's going to change and impact your retirement? And out of the 100+ people we had on the webinar, there was only one person that said they didn't get something. Now, I'd be very shocked that that was even a true statement on their end. But if you look at it, people are getting great information out of here because we are addressing the risks. We're giving you some strategies, really helping people start to get a basic understanding. So then you know where you've got to go do additional study. You've got to go do additional research. You got to go learn some more. And that's what these other 4-hour webinars are for, is to take deep dives into those topics that we talk about and cover briefly in that webinar so that you can better understand what you need to do with your retirement.
And again, Dave, thank you as always for being on the live show with us and spending this half hour every single week. It's very important that we get on and continue to help not only educate ourselves, but educate all those who are coming on and asking so many great questions.
Absolutely. And if you'll get that drum set ready, I'm going to give you one more and then I'm turning it over to you and it's all on you. But let's go ahead and make like a tree and leave. Wow. There you go. Dad joke Wednesday. Back to you.
My button's way over here. Work on that. But again, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys all again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central. And we'll talk to you then.